I'm Lucas, and this happened when I was 15, living with my mom and stepdad in a quiet little suburb just outside of Dayton, Ohio. Our house was nothing special, split level, 2-car garage, in a neighborhood where everybody knew everybody. I'm an only child, and my folks were always busy, so I got used to being on my own. I've got this thing with anxiety, though, heart races, hands shake, and I can't sleep unless it's dead quiet. Like, even the hum of the fridge bugs me. Rain's the worst. It's like a drumline in my head, keeping me up all night. It was a Friday night in June, right before summer break. The rain was coming down hard, not a thunderstorm, but that steady, heavy kind that soaks you in seconds. My mom and stepdad were at some work party, a retirement thing for one of his coworkers, about 30 minutes away. They called around 10 p.m., said the roads were a mess, and they were crashing at a hotel nearby. "Lucas, you good?" my mom asked, her voice crackling through the phone. "Lock the doors, keep the porch light on, and don't stay up too late, okay?" Yeah, I got it," I said, trying to sound cool. Truth was, I was kinda stoked to have the place to myself. I could blast music, eat junk, maybe sneak a beer from the fridge. But by midnight, the rain was driving me nuts. It was hammering the windows, and no matter how many pillows I piled on my head, I couldn't block it out. I tried gaming, but my eyes were burning, and I knew I wasn't sleeping anytime soon. I figured a walk might help. I'd done it before when I couldn't sleep, just a quick loop around the block. Our neighborhood was safe, the kind of place where people leave their bikes on the lawn. Plus, the streetlights kept things lit, so I wasn't worried. I threw on a raincoat, skipped the umbrella because I didn't care about getting wet, and left my phone behind. Screen light just keeps me wired, and I wanted to chill out. I locked the door behind me and stepped out into the rain. The air was cool, the streets empty, and the rain made everything look kinda dreamy, like the world was underwater. I walked down Maple Street, past the usual houses, Mrs. Carter's with the tacky lawn gnomes, the Jensens with their busted mailbox. It was quiet except for the rain and the occasional car whooshing by. I was starting to feel calmer, my head clearing, when I noticed something weird up ahead, near the corner by the old oak tree. There was a shape on the sidewalk, dark and still, like a pile of clothes or trash. I squinted through the rain, my sneakers sloshing in puddles. As I got closer, my stomach did a flip. It wasn't trash, it was a person, lying face down, arms limp at their sides. My heart started pounding, that anxiety spike hitting hard. Were they hurt? Drunk? Worse? Nobody just lies on the sidewalk in a downpour like that. I froze, maybe 30 feet away, trying to figure out what to do. My stepdad's voice echoed in my head, "You see someone in trouble, you help, Lucas." But every part of me screamed to turn around and bolt home. I took a shaky breath, my hands trembling, and started walking toward them. They were wearing a dark hoodie and jeans, soaked through, no rain gear. Looked like a guy, maybe, but it was hard to tell. The rain was freezing now, biting through my coat, which felt weird cause it had been warm just minutes ago. I was maybe 15 feet away when I heard it, a low, guttural moan, like something in pain, coming from the alley across the street. My head whipped around, my pulse spiking. It wasn't a human sound, more like an animal caught in a trap, but wrong, too deep and raspy. I stared into the alley, but the rain and shadows hid everything. My anxiety was going haywire, my chest tight, but I told myself it was just a stray dog or something. Nothing to freak out about. I turned back to the person on the sidewalk, ready to call out, when my blood ran cold. They weren't lying down anymore. They were sitting up, perfectly still, their hood covering their face, staring right at me. My vision tunneled, my knees wobbling. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then they stood, slow and jerky, like their joints didn't work right. Lightning flashed, and I saw it, a glint of metal in their hand. A knife, long and sharp, dripping with rain. "Run, kid," they screamed, their voice rough and unhinged, and they started sprinting toward me. I didn't think, I just ran. My sneakers slipped on the wet pavement, but I pushed harder, my heart slamming against my ribs. I heard them behind me, their steps heavy and uneven, splashing through puddles. "You're dead," they yelled, and I swear I felt the air shift, like they were inches away. I didn't dare look back. My lungs burned, my panic attack kicking in, but I kept running, cutting through a neighbor's yard to lose them. I aimed for the park at the end of the street, figuring I could hide in the trees. Yeah, that moan came from there, but I didn't have a choice. Leading this psycho to my house wasn't an option. The park was dark, the streetlights barely cutting through the rain. I dove into the tree line, my legs shaking, and ducked behind a big maple, trying to catch my breath. My chest was so tight I thought I'd pass out. I listened, rain pounding, but no footsteps. No screams. Just silence. I waited, maybe 15 minutes, my body trembling, the cold sinking into my bones. Finally, I peeked out, no one. The street was empty, the sidewalk bare. No sign of the guy or his knife. I took the long way home, cutting through backyards and alleys, checking over my shoulder every few seconds. When I got to my house, I locked the door, double-checked every window, and collapsed on the couch, still in my wet clothes. I didn't sleep that night. I never told my parents. I was too scared they'd freak out or blame me for going out. But I couldn't shake it, that moan, the way that guy moved, his voice. I looked up local news later, hoping for something about a crazy guy in the neighborhood, but there was nothing. Just a small article about a hit and run a few streets over, no details. I started wondering if that moan was connected, like maybe it wasn't an animal. Maybe it was something else, something that set that guy off. I'm 19 now, still in the same house. I don't walk at night anymore, not even to the mailbox. Every time it rains, I hear that moan in my head, see that hooded figure sitting up, knife in hand. I keep my doors locked, my blinds shut, and I sleep with earplugs, but it doesn't help. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear footsteps outside, slow and heavy, like they're waiting for me to step out again. I'm Caleb, and this happened when I was 16, living in a small town in southern Oregon, out where the houses thin out and the woods take over. Not total wilderness, but close enough, dirt roads, pine trees, and more coyotes than neighbors. This one night stuck with me, and even now, at 22, I get chills thinking about it. It was a hot August night, right in the middle of summer break. My best friend, Dylan, lived a couple streets over with his big family, mom, dad, 3 brothers. We were tight, like brothers ourselves, always getting into dumb stuff together. Dylan and I had this thing where we'd sneak out past curfew, just for kicks. Our town had a lame 11 p.m. curfew for kids under 18, so breaking it felt like we were living large. One of our favorite spots was Blackthorn Ridge, a steep trail about a mile from my house that led to a killer overlooked. You could see the whole valley up there, stars and all. Perfect place to chill and mess around. That night, around 11:15 p.m., Dylan texted me, "Yo, let's hit the ridge." I was game. The sky was clear, the moon was bright, and it was too warm to sleep anyway. I grabbed a backpack with some water, a bag of chips, and a flashlight, then slipped out my window. Dylan met me at the corner, his hoodie on, grinning like an idiot. "Ready for an adventure, bro," he said. I laughed, and we headed for the trail. The hike up Blackthorn Ridge was chill at first. The moonlight lit the path, winding through thick pines, and the air smelled like sap and dirt. It was quiet, just our sneakers crunching gravel and the occasional owl hooting. Night hikes always had this vibe, half peaceful, half spooky, like you're somewhere you shouldn't be. We were talking crap, joking about school, when Dylan stopped dead, holding up a hand. "Shut up a sec," he whispered, his face serious. I froze, straining to hear. At first, nothing, just the breeze rustling the trees. Then I caught it, a snap, like a branch breaking, maybe 40 yards off to our left, deep in the woods. My heart gave a little kick. "Probably a raccoon or some shit," I said, trying to play it cool. Dylan didn't answer, just kept staring into the dark. Another snap, louder, then a low crunch, like something heavy stepping on pine needles. Not fast, but steady. Crunch. Crunch. "Dude, that ain't no raccoon," Dylan muttered. He was right. Whatever it was sounded big, way too big for a deer or coyote. My skin prickled, and I felt that weird itch, like something was watching us. We stood there, dead quiet, scanning the trees. The moonlight barely reached into the forest, and all I could see were shadows. The crunching stopped, and for a second, I thought we were good. Then we heard it, a low growl, deep and guttural, like nothing I'd ever heard. Not a dog, not a bear. Something else. My stomach dropped. Dylan grabbed a stick off the ground and tossed it toward the sound, hard. It crashed through the brush, and everything went silent. No birds, no wind, nothing. We looked at each other, both trying not to freak out. "Let's keep moving," I said, my voice shaky. We started up the trail again, faster now, aiming for the overlook. The plan was to chill there, but I was already thinking about bailing. We made it to the ridge, this big flat rock with a drop-off on one side and trees on the other. The view was dope, stars everywhere, the valley dark below, but I couldn't relax. Dylan sat on the rock, pulling out a granola bar, acting chill, but his eyes kept darting to the trees. We were halfway through a dumb story about some kid at school when it started again. Crunch. Snap. This time, it was closer, maybe 20 yards, coming from the trail we just climbed. I stood up, my heart racing. "You hear that, right?" I whispered. Dylan nodded, his face pale in the moonlight. The crunching got louder, slower, like whatever it was didn't care if we heard. Then came another sound, a scrape, like claws dragging on wood. My mind flashed to every horror movie I'd seen, and I was losing it. "We gotta bounce," Dylan said, grabbing his bag. We didn't wait. We bolted down the trail, not jogging but running, our flashlights bouncing wild. The footsteps came after us, fast, heavy, crashing through the brush. Not human, not even close. It sounded like it was tearing through the trees, branches snapping like twigs. My lungs burned, my legs screaming, but I didn't stop. Dylan was ahead, yelling, "Go, go, go." Then the footsteps stopped, just like that. Dead silence. We skidded to a halt, panting, our flashlights shaking. I turned, scanning the trail behind us. Nothing. Just the dark, the trees, the moon. But that feeling, like eyes boring into my back, was stronger than ever. "You see anything?" I gasped. Dylan shook his head, but he looked spooked, worse than I'd ever seen him. "It's still out there," he whispered. We didn't stick around to find out. We ran the rest of the way down, tripping over roots, scraping our arms on branches. When we hit the road near my house, we slowed, gasping for air. Neither of us said much, just kept walking, checking over our shoulders. I crashed at Dylan's that night, too freaked to go home alone. The next day, we went back to the trail at noon, sunlight blazing, figuring we'd see what was up. We found tracks, not sneakers, not boots. Bare feet, huge, with deep gouges where toes should be, like claws. They led off the trail into the woods, then just stopped. Near the overlook, we saw scratches on a pine tree, long and deep, higher than either of us could reach. No animal we knew could do that. We never hiked Blackthorn Ridge again. Dylan and I don't talk about it much, but sometimes, when we're chilling, he'll bring it up, half joking, half serious. What the hell was that thing, man? I don't have an answer. All I know is it wasn't a bear, wasn't a person. Whatever it was fast, it was big, and it was hunting us. I still live in town, but I don't go near the woods at night. Sometimes, when it's quiet, I hear a crunch outside my window, and I freeze, wondering if it's still out there, waiting for me to step back into its turf. When I was 19, I took a job as a night security guard at this old warehouse complex on the outskirts of Phoenix. Not gonna lie, I needed the money bad. I dropped out of community college and was living in this crappy studio apartment that cost way more than it should have. The job paid decent for what it was, and honestly, how hard could it be? Just sit around all night, do a few rounds, and collect a paycheck. The place was called Meridian Storage Solutions, and it was basically this massive complex of connected warehouses that different companies rented out for storing stuff. Office furniture, construction equipment, random junk that businesses didn't want cluttering up their actual locations. My supervisor, this older guy named Rick, showed me around on my first day. He seemed cool enough, told me the job was pretty straightforward. Make rounds every 2 hours, check that all the doors are locked, keep an eye on the security monitors, and call the cops if anything weird happened. Weird like what? I asked him. Rick shrugged. Kids trying to break in, homeless people looking for a place to crash, that kind of thing. Nothing you can't handle. He handed me this big ring of keys and a flashlight that looked like it could double as a weapon. One more thing, he said as we walked toward the exit. Warehouse C is off limits. Don't go in there, don't worry about checking it. That section's been sealed off for renovation. I nodded. Made sense. The door is locked anyway, he added. But seriously, just stay out of there. My first few shifts were exactly what you'd expect. Boring as hell. I'd sit in the little security office, watch Netflix on my phone, and every couple hours I'd do my rounds. The place was dead quiet most of the time, just the occasional creaking sound that old buildings make. About 2 weeks in, though, things started getting off. It was around 2 a.m. on a Tuesday when I first noticed it. I was doing my usual rounds, walking through Warehouse A with my flashlight, when I heard this sound coming from the direction of Warehouse C. Thump. Like something heavy had fallen over. I stopped walking and listened. Nothing. I figured maybe some boxes had shifted or something. Old warehouses, stuff settles, right? But then I heard it again. Thump. Thump. This time it sounded more deliberate. Like someone was moving around in there. I walked over to the door that separated Warehouse A from Warehouse C. There was a big "Do Not Enter Renovation in Progress" sign taped to it, and sure enough, it was locked up tight. I pressed my ear against the door and listened. Silence. Must have been my imagination. The next night, same thing happened. Around 2 a.m., I heard those thumping sounds coming from Warehouse C. This time they went on for maybe 10 minutes, then stopped. I called Rick the next morning and told him about it. Probably just the building settling, he said. These old places make all kinds of noise. Don't worry about it. But I was worried about it. Because the sounds weren't random, they had a pattern to them. Like someone was walking around, moving things. On my 4th week, I decided to take a closer look at Warehouse C from the outside. I'd never really paid attention to it before, but walking around the building during my break, I noticed something weird. All the other warehouses had windows near the top, those high, industrial-style windows that let in light during the day. Warehouse C didn't have any windows. They'd all been boarded up with plywood. And not recently either. The wood looked old, weathered. Like it had been there for years. That night, the sound started again around 2 a.m. But this time, they were different. Scraping. Like something heavy being dragged across concrete. I grabbed my flashlight and headed to the door between Warehouse A and C. The scraping got louder as I got closer. Scary up. Pause. Scary up. It was definitely coming from inside Warehouse C. I tried the door handle, even though I knew it was locked. It didn't budge. But then I heard something that made my blood run cold. Breathing. Heavy, labored breathing coming from right on the other side of the door. I jumped back like the door was on fire. The breathing stopped. Everything went quiet. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, heart pounding, waiting for something else to happen. Nothing. The next morning, I called Rick again. Look, there's definitely someone in Warehouse C, I told him. I heard breathing, movement, all kinds of stuff. We need to check it out. Rick was quiet for a long time. Listen, he finally said. That warehouse has been sealed for 3 years. Nobody goes in there. Nobody has keys to it except corporate, and they're not going to send anyone out there in the middle of the night. Then how do you explain what I'm hearing? Another long pause. Maybe you should consider switching today's shift, he said. That pissed me off. I wasn't making this stuff up. That weekend, I did some digging online. I looked up the history of Meridian Storage Solutions, trying to figure out what the deal was with Warehouse C. What I found made me wish I'd never taken the job. 3 years ago, there'd been an accident. A fire started in Warehouse C during the day shift. By the time the fire department got there, the whole section was engulfed. One person died in that fire. A security guard. His name was Marcus Torres, and he'd been trapped inside when part of the roof collapsed. They found his body 3 days later. According to the news articles, there were some weird circumstances around the fire. Marcus had been doing his rounds when it started, but witnesses said they heard him screaming from inside the warehouse for almost 20 minutes before the roof came down. The thing is, the fire department said later that the section where they found his body should have been accessible. There was no reason he couldn't have gotten out. It was like he'd been trapped by something that wasn't there. After reading that, I seriously considered quitting. But I needed the money, and honestly, part of me didn't want to believe it was connected. Maybe I was just psyching myself out. That Tuesday night, I decided to test something. When I heard the usual sounds coming from Warehouse C around 2 a.m., I walked over to the door and knocked. 3 times. Knock. 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 Everything went quiet. Then, after about 30 seconds, I heard it. Knock. 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 Someone, or something, had knocked back. My hands were shaking as I knocked again. Knock. Knock. The response came immediately. Knock. Knock. I backed away from the door, my heart hammering in my chest. That's when I heard the voice. Muffled, like it was coming through thick walls, but definitely human. Help! The voice was hoarse, desperate. Help me! I ran back to the security office and called 911. When the cops showed up, I explained what I'd heard. They were skeptical, but they agreed to check it out. We went to Warehouse C together, and one of the officers banged on the door. Phoenix PD. If anyone's in there, respond. Nothing. They had bolt cutters in their car, so they cut the chain on the door and went inside. I waited outside while they searched. They came out 20 minutes later, shaking their heads. Place is empty, one of them said. Just a bunch of burnt debris and some old equipment. Nobody's been in there for years. But as they were leaving, the younger cop pulled me aside. Look, I don't know what you heard, he said quietly, but that place gave me the creeps. The air in there feels wrong. Like something bad happened. He wasn't wrong. I went back inside the warehouse, but I couldn't concentrate on anything. Every little sound made me jump. Around 4 a.m., I heard my name. David. It was coming from Warehouse C. Clear as day. David, help me. That was it. I grabbed my stuff, locked up the security office, and got the hell out of there. I never went back. The next morning, I called Rick and quit over the phone. Told him I was moving back home to California, which wasn't true, but I didn't know what else to say. Can't say I blame you, Rick said. You're the 4th guard to quit this year. 4th? Yeah. Nobody lasts long on that shift. Something about that place, it gets to people. I found out later that Meridian Storage Solutions shut down 6 months after I quit. The whole complex was demolished. But sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I still think about that voice calling my name. And I wonder if Marcus Torres is still trapped in there, somewhere, trying to find his way out of a fire that ended 3 years ago. I guess some people just can't let go. Even after they're gone.